welcome to this evening's masterclass as part of our ReBels program. Really pleased to have everyone here with us this evening, and exceptionally pleased to have the brilliant Euella Jackson here as our guest speaker. I think you guys are in for an absolute treat. Little bit of housekeeping. We're in webinar mode in Zoom, so you'll feel free to throw anything into the chat function, and if you've got questions, to pop them in the Q&A function, which you should see on your bottom tab. I'll be keeping an eye on that, and we will be I will try and bring all your questions up into conversation with Euella, so we will try to get to everything and anything you guys bring up. This is the fourth of this spring's this first half term's masterclasses. We've got one more before we break for half term, which is with Brett Harvey and John Crooks. Also not to be missed, like all of them, do not miss these, they're great. John and Brett are working with us at the moment, and they're here next week talking about film with next to no budget. Now, these guys have worked with everyone, from George Lucas from Lucasfilms to everyone across the BBC and Netflix, and I mean, like, their list. If you haven't checked out on our webinar page, on our masterclass page on our website, you need to go see them, and then you need to sign up because it's going to be good. But even more importantly than worrying about next week, tonight. I am really, really pleased that we've got Euella here, both in her own right and in her capacity as one of the inbound co-leaders of Rising Arts. Euella is an award-winning presenter and journalist and filmmaker and YouTuber and activist, looking at how we change and reframe the cultural sector, shall we say. I've seen her work numerous times over the years, and she's one of the most eloquent and brilliant women I know. And so I'm really pleased that she's here tonight to talk to you, and that she was up for my subject matter that I asked her to talk about, which was this idea of like, who says you can't and why you shouldn't believe them. Because I feel like the work that Euella's been doing, and that the collective that she's part of with Rising Arts, really epitomizes this. If you don't know Rising Arts work, Euella's going to tell you loads more, and I'm just going to give you a little heads up. You should. They're based in Bristol, and they advocate for the sector and cultural change through like campaigns and research projects and artwork. And their statements are that they are young, creative, inclusive, radical, adaptable, provocative, and we are rising. You really should check out their work. It's absolutely brilliant. It's probably enough for me to start off with. I'm really excited to have introduce Euella. She's going to present to you about her work and about Rising Arts for a bit, and then we're going to have a Q&A. Euella's Wi-Fi is in the way that we will have at times, being affected by the wind, the rain, the snow, the storms, or whatever is causing the gremlins to run along the lines. If we lose her, she will be right back, and you just get me for a short term, and I hope that's okay. I'm going to go for the time being, though, and Euella, over to your fair self.
Oh, thank you so much, Laura. You make me feel so much better, more calmer about my awful Wi-Fi situation. I think as well, because you can't tell whether you're just talking to yourself or whether people are like, you know, you're just frozen in an awkward position. So yeah, so I'm just going to quickly share a little presentation that I put together for this event. Fabulous. So yeah, we are a beautiful community of amazing young creatives. Everything from you know, dancers, performers, thinkers, provocateurs, artists, illustrators, graphic designers. You get the drift. It's we wanted to be able to create a space where you could bring so many different types of people together into one space and see what happens, especially people who are under the age of 30, who are navigating such an interesting time in not only their lives, but in the world. So could you go to the next slide, please, Laura? Fabulous. So yeah, we are a radical youth-led social enterprise. And I think one of the key things about Rising is the fact that it's youth-led. We are completely committed to having young people make the decisions, decide how we operate, what is important to Rising, and the sorts of change that we want to create. The things that we do as an agency is we help young creatives who are traditionally underrepresented in the creative industries get paid. So that isn't a picture there. No Climate Justice Without Social Justice is from a radical billboard campaign that we ran in the summer, where we took over all the billboards in the city and gifted them to young creatives, asking them, whose future are we talking about when we're making all these decisions about the pandemic, or what, you know, what we're doing with healthcare, or what we're doing in terms of housing, whose future are we talking about? And really it's young people's. Can you go to the next slide, please, Laura? So a little bit about my story. I'm really happy to be in this space today that's called ReBels, because I definitely identify with the term rebel. Not in the sense of like a naughty person or a bad person, as I'm sure none of you are, but in the sense of someone who's always been quietly self-assured, somebody who creates the good type of trouble, the sort of person that, although I was never really good at communicating it to others or even to myself about what it is that I want to do, I've always secretly known what I wanted to do. And I'm not saying that in terms of like what job I want to do, because I still don't know, and I don't think anyone really knows what they want to do with such a big question like that. But it's all about those tiny moments of self-determination when you're faced with a crossroads and you make decisions that are truthful to what it is that you like, your personal mission. And I just want to say in this space that I want to affirm all the outsiders, all the Jacks and Jackies of all trades, all the people who, you know, who trust. So I've done a load of different things, and I haven't really spoken a lot about what I've done. But you know, as you know, I'm 26, and I guess I started off at theatre school. So from the ages of year 7 to year 11, I was at a full-time theatre school where, you know, it was amazing. It was like, you know, in the mornings, you'll be doing ballet, tap dancing, you know, to theatre school age year 7 to year 11, and it was, you know, one of the best, you know, times of my life. But it only came out of the fact that I did what I expected to get in 11 plus. And for those of you who don't know what an 11 plus is a test that you do in year 6 to determine what secondary school that you could go to. And I didn't get the grades that I wanted to get, and didn't get to go into the school that I wanted to go to. And so I remember my auntie, is kind of awkward, but she was on the toilet and she was just like shouted out from the toilet, like, what about a theatre school? I read that somebody went to a theatre school once, and I don't know if they're a thing. And I thought, oh, yeah, I like drama, you know, I like to be in school plays or whatever. But it really was one of those moments where a door was closed to me, and instead of, you know, waiting for the door to open, or, you know, thinking, oh my goodness, my life is over, I'm not going to go to the school that I planned to go to, pivot. And that's why one of the things that I want to share with you today is, when one door closes, look left, right, up and down for a window. And the reason why I say for a window is because opportunities don't always look the same. sometimes an opportunity might look like a friendship. Sometimes an opportunity might look like a rejection. Sometimes an opportunity might look like failure to some. But it's about using the kind of, having the conviction and the imagination to window into a door. So that was the kind of first thing that really kind of helped me along. And then I finished, you know, year 11, went on to, I actually went on to go to a college in a completely different area, like a completely different city, a different part of the country, and not many friends, didn't know anything about the culture of that space. And I was really lonely. And while I was lonely and I was just, you know, spent a lot of time thinking to myself, I started a YouTube channel that was talking about, you know, sex and relationships, body positivity, wellness. And this was something that my mum has always said to me, you know, in terms of the internet, don't put anything on the internet, you know, you'll never get a job if you do that, it will never come to anything, you know. That was something she always said to me. But me, with myself and the way that I was just like silently, quietly assured, I was just like, I'm gonna do it anyway. I'm not advocating for you to not listen to your parents because they have a whole wealth of knowledge. But I knew that this was something that I really enjoyed doing, and it was an outlet for me. And I'm sure many of you have creative outlets. And even though it wasn't the most conventional outlet, it was definitely something that led to other opportunities that I hadn't even fathomed when I was doing my YouTubing. It also reminds me of a conversation that happened when I was at my theatre school, where one of my teachers came out of the staff room with the deputy head of the school, and they said, Ella, we've just been having a conversation in the staff room. I think that you're going to go on to study English at Oxford University, and she thinks that you're going to do, you know, acting on, you know, on the West End. You know, which one of us is right, you know? And obviously back then I was like in year 9, just trying to get by, didn't even know what I really wanted for dinner, let alone what I wanted to do with my life. But I was like, yeah, I don't know, I don't really know. But it's funny because I never went on to do either of those things. And it's about making sure that when people put their expectations onto you about what they think you should do, never see that as pressure, see that as I guess a toolbox. See it as people offering gifts to you about the potential and the scope of what you could be, but never see it as something that restricts you or constrains you. See it as something, thanks for that, I'm going to take that in my back pocket, and I know someone believes that I can do this and someone else believes that I can do that, but you never actually feel the pressure to do what people say. So anyway, I went off to uni after, you know, doing my YouTube and stuff like that, and uni in Bristol. And I'm not going to lie to you, didn't have a good time either. Seems like I'm just never having great places. And I guess when you've been to a theatre school, probably quite a hard act to follow. But uni was great because I learned more about the subject that I wanted to do. I went and did sociology, which was completely different. And that was a complete fluke as well, because I planned to do psychology at A level, but because of my theatre school never actually taught proper science, they didn't allow me to do psychology, and they were like, oh, would you like to do sociology instead? And I was like, I guess. And I ended up doing that for my degree. So that's another example of how when one door closes, another door or another window can open. But when I was at uni, I went and did a year abroad in Los Angeles. And that was where I really got into this activist space. For the first time in maybe my whole life, I felt Black. And not to say that in a sense of like, that I never knew I was Black before I went to America, or that you know, I didn't see color or race, but you were really racialized, you know, you were the Black girl. And it wasn't began to learn more about my history and where I want to go and where I want to see Black people and other marginalized groups go, So having a year abroad in Los Angeles where the weather was, bon appetit, it was beautiful, with a completely different lens of seeing the world, a different way of relating to others, and a different way of identifying myself. So I came back, and I ended up being a content creator at Rife magazine, which is based at the Watershed in Bristol, with some amazing people. And that was where, my YouTubing and the sociology and the fact that I've been in America and all the other things that were going on, the fact that I had a performing arts background, really played into it. And since then, I've, done so many things. I'm on the Commission for Race Equality for Bristol. I'm a content creator, journalist, filmmaker. I've worked with VR. I do consultancy, public speaking, producing engagement, social media. Like, I say that because I never let anyone tell me what I could be or what the constraints of what I could do were. And now, if someone asks me what I actually do, I don't know. I just, do what I want. I do what makes me happy. I do things that allow me to express myself. But it means now of experiences, of relationships, networks, that I can now draw upon and that I can share with others. So one thing I would say to you is that if you're going through life and you're not quite sure about what you want to do, think of it as like finding tools for your toolbox, as opposed to getting work experience or understanding what you want to do with your life or any of those things. Because at the end of the day, our lives are just a rich tapestry of all the things and all the influences and the people and that we've met and that have touched us. So if opportunities for you to build onto that, just take them, grab them with both hands, because you never know where it could lead you. Laura, could you go to the next slide, please? So that leads me to where I am now with Rising. I'm super lucky that I've been able to do so many things. And to be able to come into an organization that is truly phenomenal. Like, I can't explain to you how phenomenal this organization is, in the sense of the team. I'm selfishly not even talking to the people that we put on boards. Like, I'm not talking people in the organization make me feel. They make me want to better. They make me more compassionate for others. It makes me more compassionate to myself. It's kind of right organization that encourages and pays for you to rest. They believe that rest is part of the work. And I wanted to share this quote, because this is one of the foundations of everything that Rising do, that we believe young people are leaders now, not in the future. And this is a key example of who says you can't and why you shouldn't believe them. Because if we listen to all the people that said that young people can't do this, young people don't know that, young people are doing this, young people are doing that, then we would never be able to live in our truth and share our true potential with the world. We have so much to offer the world, but it's very rare that we get the opportunities to share that in a legitimate space or in a legitimate way. So this is one of our core values, and it means that Rising is youth-led and ensures that the young people that do everything that we do for, we're also doing it with them. So Laura, can you share the next slide, please? So this is an example of how our non-exec directors are under the age of 25. So the non-exec directors are younger than me. All of the board are under the age of 26. Now, when you think of that, if you think of the fact that most boards are, the demographics are usually older, white, middle class, people, usually named John, if you're talking about the charity sector, fun fact. this is radical work. And in September of this year, 2 team members, myself being one of them, will become the co-directors of Rising Arts Agency. So we have this this mission, or this kind of rule, that we don't want to see leaders taking up too much space. We want to ensure that something like Rising, that's a community resource, that's for people, stays in the hands of the people. So when you see organizations where the CEO has been at the top for 20 odd years and just stays there, and it doesn't allow for anyone new to come up, it doesn't allow for any new learning or any new growth of that organization or the people within it, we feel that it's important for directors or CEOs or those in leadership positions to hand over the leadership after a maximum around 5 years, to then be able to hand it over to the next generation. And this is something that we're really thinking about in terms of the work we're doing to transform leadership. We're thinking about things like care, like what is the role of care in leadership? What is the role of community in leadership? You know, what are creative solutions to problem solving? You know, these are the sorts of things that we're trying to unpick. How do you be, you know, inclusive in the way in which you lead, right? How can you have a flat hierarchical structure where everybody feels a sense of ownership over not just the work that they're doing, but the work that everybody's doing? So these are the sorts of things that we're talking about and things that we're grappling with. But it's such a brilliant space to be in. And you know, the fact that, you know, I'm only 26 and have been able to come into Rising and work with the team, and then get to a place where me and another team member, Jess, will be being co-directors. It's wild. It's crazy. Like, if you told me 2 years ago that was going to happen, I would have told you that you were, you know, smoking some crazy stuff, you know. But it is happening, and it's because we lived with this idea of why not, or more importantly, what if? Why not? What if? One of the most empowering phrases. There is no reason why these things cannot be a reality. And some of the things that we're trying to do at Rising at the moment have never been done, have literally don't exist, you know? So we're constantly trying to grapple with things and create new processes and systems for never happen, in which you make community. All of these things we're trying to do, and sometimes we've got nothing to model it on. And that's why I kind of say to you, in whatever you're doing, don't worry about how it's been done before. Do it in whatever way makes sense to you, whatever way feels most truthful to you. And it links back to what I was saying at the beginning about that idea of being a rebel and having that kind of that quiet self-assuredness. You know, you don't have to be the kind of loud, confident person that's like, I want to be famous or I want to be a star. Like, it's not that kind of thing. It's about that really quiet voice. You know, when you can just sit with yourself and there's this tiny, tiny voice that isn't hysterical, that isn't shouting or shrieking. It's calm, and it's calm because it's confident, right? That's what we're talking about, that calm, confident voice that says, I don't want to do this, or that calm, confident voice that says, this is what I was born to do, you know? So I urge you, if you get any time this weekend, or, you know, or you can make it part of your weekly routine, to take moments to just reflect, to just check in with that quiet voice that just says, what if? When one door closes, to write up what's amazing about them and use your imagination and opportunities to turn them into a door. The next one is, what others think you should do shouldn't feel like pressure. They should feel gifts or offerings. It's like asking for advice from your friends. You know, somebody might say, I think you should do A. Someone says, I think you should do B. Someone might say C. And you'll say, actually, thanks for all of that. I'm going to keep that in my ammunition, in my toolbox. actually I'm going to do P. Next one is, just because it's been done one way doesn't mean it can't be different. Things can always be done differently. And you know, you are the ones that you doing it means that it will be different if you're being authentic, putting yourself into it. The next one is there are many different types of leadership. First and foremost, you are a leader to yourself than others. That's something that, you know, we are learning as we're going at Rising, about how to take care of yourself, and then you can take care of your community, or you can take care of your cause, or you can take care of your, and be that leader that you want to have. Rest and well-being is part of the work. It's part of that care that we're talking about. Care and rest is part of the resilience. The only way to get your voice heard or make change happen. You know, you have your outlets. If you're a creative person, be creative. If you're, you know, if you're someone who, you know, your activism is through, you know, the way in which you spend your money. You know, you might spend your money ethically to make a stance and to get your voice heard in that way. You might get your voice heard through who you vote for, or the things that you won't tolerate. So, you know, if you're not the most extroverted person in the world, which we're not all, you know, not all of us are, and admittedly, I'm not either, you know, find other ways that you feel empowered to get your opinions out there and to get your voice heard. And last but not least, know your why. Like, what are you doing it for? And this is something that I learned from Laura, actually, around what is your personal values? Why are you here? What are you doing it for? You know, and that's something that changes, obviously, because you are growing, and that's amazing. But keep checking in. What matters to you? What's important to you right now? So that's it from me. Thank you so much, and I appreciate you listening while it was probably really hard to hear. Thank you, Laura.
Euella, that was totally brilliant. Hopefully we can get you to put your video back on and see if the gremlins will allow you to appear at the same time as me, because it's much more fun looking at you two. Please, gremlins, go away. We like Euella. We'd like to keep her. That was just an absolute joy to listen to, and thank you so much for taking the time, and thank you so much for coping with being an amazing eloquent voice whilst I was your click goddess.
Oh, you did so good.
Anyway, thank you.
Amen for you. Amen for you.
Thanks. Here's the training. I thought you said so many things in that really resonated with me, and were things which I think I've always instinctively held on to. Shout out for the Jackson and Jills. I am a major believer in the fact we need to reclaim this. It's the original phrase where this whole, you know, jack of all trades and master of none, we use in a really derogative way, and it actually isn't. The original phrase came from sailing and from all the big tall ships, and where if you were just a general seaman, so general dog's body on the boat, you were known as a jack. And a jack of all trades was a compliment because you could do everything. You could be a ship, you could sail, you could navigate, you were your own chef, you could sew, you could make barrels, you were you could literally everything. But you were the master to no one, because the only master on board a ship, of course, is the captain. And so the original saying was jack of all trades, master of no one, and was a compliment to show that you were super skilled and very adaptable. And then somewhere along the lines in the English language, it got bastardized to master of none. And then that turning from meaning master of no one, none, to being master of none of those trades. And it's such a shame, because I think I was always taught that made me a little bit shit at all the things I did, rather than that it was a good thing to have a wider outlook on stuff. And yeah, so I back Euella when she says, be a jack, be a Jill of all trades, keep your options wide, because I think, as you said, you said some stuff there about that means you can have more tools in your toolbox, which is a really great thing. And the fact that the opportunities that come at us come loads of different directions, and usually not where they're thinking. I always think of it being a bit like little stepping stones in a river. They're not in a straight line. They're kind of like, they're sometimes 6 steps off to the left one way or 6 steps off to the right, and what our navigations are not interesting if they're often railroaded and straightforward.
I agree.
Yeah. With the why not and what if, I think, are really important. Also, guys, please do add in your questions and anything in the Q&A section, because otherwise I'm just going to keep talking to you, Ella, and feedback things which I liked about her talk. And you know, you might have really, really important things you want to ask, so do ask them. The why not and what if, I think, is really interesting. I think a lot of people forget that we have there's always permission for doing things differently, and seeing things differently. And I remember somebody saying to me, if you see that there is a different way, if you can, it's like the thing about not feeling like you have a right to be at the table. If you can see that something is missing or needs to be said or needs to be done, then you are the right person to do it, because you are the only person who has seen it. And so that what if and why not are part of that. But I thought what was so crucial there is that sometimes others just haven't seen that need, that change. Why not that what if things were different? And as Euella said, I really, really back that systems are there because they have been previous habits. And a lot of them are not fit for purpose. They're not fit for purpose for our society. They're not fit for purpose for how we work, how we want to develop, for the demographics we have. They have institutionalized everything wrapped up in them. And so, yeah, really do always hold on to that. There is a very good question that's come through here, which is, how can young people get involved with rising arts? And that's come in from George.
Hello, George. There's a lot of different ways. So, you know, the first and foremost, it's getting in touch with us on social media, like connecting with us, because we are very vocal on Rising social media about the things that we care about. And it's a good way for you to kind of gauge whether we're the type of family you want. Because, you know, there's the kind of different priorities. But at the end of the day, we care about whatever our community cares about. So that's, you know, the people, what we are sharing is a reflection of the things that people are thinking about. But another thing is to sign up to our newsletter, which is on our website, which I can pop in the chat, because there's also lots of opportunities. We share a lot of opportunities, not just from Rising, but from other people in the kind of local area. So that's a really good way to kind of start, and then you can kind of see what feels best for you, because everybody's journey, everyone's journey is different into Rising, and we kind of like that.
Yeah, and that's also what's so great about that video you showed, and I think is also a really important thing to think about, is that the manner in which we embody our creativity is, there are so many ways, and sometimes that's being at the front, but sometimes that's about being the numbers person and being the communicator, or being the systems person who allows everything to be possible, let alone the person who's designing the tech or the hardware or the infrastructure or whatever it is. And what I loved about that film, about who you guys were, is like the fourth word is administrator, that is given validity and purpose really early on in that list. Which I don't think is an alphabetical order. I think it was just that's no. I just suddenly had a panic that you're about to say it's just alphabetized, Laura. You're just not very up on your alphabet. But I think that's also really important to hold on to, that though none of these, the role you take should never be seen as a criticism or a critique on who you are, either your potential or where you've chosen to be. It's finding the fit in the journey that works for you, which is also really important.
Definitely.
Here's another really good question that's come in. Oh, this is a juicy one, Euella. Why do we need leaders, and why can't we all lead together?
Yeah, I think that's a brilliant question,
isn't it?
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think I think part of it speaks to some of the things that Laura was talking about in terms of like seeing things. Like we don't all see the same things because we're all kind of positioned differently in the world. And therefore we all need to kind of bring our knowledge, our values, our insight, hindsight, foresight to a space where we can then deal with that collectively. So, you know, Rising, we really do believe in the value of the collective. You know, we call ourselves a community of young creatives, and we prize ourselves on the idea of collective activism. But we recognize that for so long, young people have been denied the title or the spaces to lead. And that's why we talk about, you know, there are many different ways to lead, right? Whether it's just having the, you know, being proactive to lead yourself, because sometimes that's even hard in itself to be able to lead and guide yourself. But then to think about there's different types, whether it's a community leader, whether it's a thought leader, you know, someone who's really kind of thinking and grappling with different ideas. But I think your point is bang on. Like, we don't really need leaders, but we need this idea of the collective. If everyone's bringing that together, then it's gonna be sweet.
And I think you talked about that quite eloquently, because you talked about quietness and self-assuredness, and about you had to lead, be a leader for yourself first and know what your drivers are before you can do anything else. And I think we're in a really dodgy place in the UK, not actually I think necessarily in our generation or the way that you're working or the way that we're hoping we are starting to work and are succeeding in working at the Barbican, but generally we still think of leaders as hero leaders, somebody leading from the front, who's just like, I'm off this, only me, all credit to me, did I mention me? And actually I don't think either Euella and I would ever identify that as being a leadership style that we I shouldn't take presume your words, it's not a leadership style I'm interested in. And one of the most extraordinary leaders I've ever met, she is one of the quietest, most shy women ever. I've never known anyone manage to cause such a ruckus and get so much stuff done. But she has this really brilliant turn of phrase, which she says, you can always make something happen if you don't mind who gets the credit. And that is about not standing at the front. That's about the change needs to happen. And leadership is often about holding and knowing what that changes, whether or not that's just the way you conduct yourself. Or as Euella says, is about how you build the community. I think of everybody in Rising Arts who I've met as leaders in their own right. They are exceptional artists and communicators and makers and advocates. And the agency as a whole is a bastion and needs to be held high and is leading the way, but it's doing so in a model that it doesn't have. And you're going to be co-leader with Jess.
Yeah, so that was a very intentional thing.
Yeah. So I think leadership doesn't mean there has to be one person at the front or the one person at the top. I don't think it's actually a very good model or very healthy. But we are sometimes still dealing with systemic structures that place that there. So I'm a chief executive officer. My role in the organization puts me at the top of an organization. That's not how we work as a team. There are responsibilities which are on my shoulder, but you know, that's probably not a very helpful example. I
think it is.
What do you you spoke about self-care and resilience, and I think and you guys as a community, and I think there is something very interesting in that, because I think one of the things I found hardest finding and took me the longest amount of time to find, and I don't think I really found until I became part of the Pervasive Media Studio community, was a community that loved me, saw me, and respected me for the whole of who I was, and who were also my critical friends. And I feel like we don't often get the chance to find, and we don't find those very often. Do you, has being part of Rising Arts also been, or rife, or have there been points where you've found that you've kind of found a community and a sense of yourself in a different way. You spoke about it a bit in your talk. Can you talk a bit
Mm.
more about that?
Yeah, definitely. I think there have been two major points in my life. Where the first time was when I was in America, where um there was these, the group of women of color really brought me in a way that I'd never really experienced before. And it was it was a great time because, you're in a complete tree. I was doing sociology, so I was learning about how people are, but then also having the opportunity to do stuff like, the history of sexuality and women of color critique and queer of color critique and all these, really interesting, women of color feminism. But then also having the lens of like, I'm actually British and I have a completely different relationship, even in my blackness, of not identifying as African American, being British and then second generation Jamaican, So it was really great to be able to have that space of so much similarity, but also difference. And then the second time is also rising, in the sense of, like we've said about the power of the community. Like the core team is such a kind of like a radical peer network where, a lot of our work is just having sessions, talking and reflecting and coaching each other. That's a lot of our working week, and we still manage to do so much. But it's about us being able to kind of be really vulnerable with each other in a way that you don't really get to do that in many workplaces. And also knowing that you can bring your whole self to work. So, what was going on in the summer with the resurgence of the Black Lives Matter movement was an extremely traumatic time for, myself and other members of the team. But, one of the responses that the team had was that we closed the agency for a week. And to have that amount of solidarity from a team that was basically being like, we have members of the team who have got trauma, who are dealing with this. Out of respect, we are going to just close. We've never closed before, in our whole time of existence, we've never closed, for a week. That wasn't like Christmas, but that felt like, it was a valid reason. And therefore it gave you validity. It made you feel like how I'm feeling is a real thing and I should, so I think if there are ways to bring compassion and rest, because we, that week off, that closing was for rest, to be able to pay people to rest and for them to schedule time in their calendar for rest, that is a healthy working relationship, and it means that you're at your best. Because we were talking, Laura, about the fact that your brain's still going on, you're still, the clogs are still turning, whether or not you're in the office at the laptop, or you're making your film or whatever, or if you're just going for a walk. So
yeah, I'm a great believer of the back of your brain cracking on with stuff while the front of you does something else. I was telling you the story about when I used to run a theatre in London. I used to cycle to work. I realised I was doing all my huge strategic thinking on the bike ride, because 90% of my brain was focusing on keeping me alive in London traffic, and 10% of my brain was just slowly going, oh yeah, that just solves that. And things were just percolating. And that thing of like, there is understanding that our work habits aren't what we're being told as well, that tidying, that thing about tidying your house and tidying your brain at the end of a week, or when you've got a problem that you can't unravel and everyone thinks they're doing a bad thing because they're procrastinating, when actually you're probably thinking and resolving ideas, or maybe there is something you haven't understood about something yet, you need to unlock, and you're back, when we hesitate writing a piece of strategic work, or when we haven't got the guts that day, giving yourself permission for the days that we're strong and the days we want to hide under our desks. And I think that, especially at the moment, with the amount of pressures that we're under, with suddenly having to operate our lives in such a different way, we have to be kind to ourselves like that. And that's what's so exciting, is that everyone who's involved with Rising Arts feels like they are growing and going from strength to strength because there is a kindness in the way that they feel like they're being held. We have a new question which is from Tim Norman. What's your top tips for young people being able to get into the room in the first place and having the confidence to get their voices heard? Cracking question, Tim. How do you start? How do you have the confidence to get into that room in the first place and know that you have the right to be heard and be heard?
Yeah, that's a great one. So I think one provocation I'll just throw out there is that, you know, you can make your own room.
Bingo.
Because, you know, that's not where I'm going to end, but, you know, that is something that, you know, you should think about, you know, like, why are there gatekeepers to this room that you're trying to get into, right? Why is it not just open access that you can come in and share yourself and go when you please? So that's just one thing to bear in mind. But I understand that that's not really how the world works currently, you know, or it's very difficult to build your own rooms. So I would say, think about your network and the people that you know. That, you know, in terms of tools, the people that you can kind of put in your toolbox is really fun. It's a really fun thing to do and shouldn't be intimidating. Like, when we think of networking, we think of, you know, schmoozing in a room with a glass of wine or whatever, making your way around to the kind of most important people. But there are different ways of networking, and if it's broken for you, make it work for you. Find ways, you know. Is it that you're better via email? Is it that you're creative and like to make videos, and you can make someone a little video animation that pops up into their email saying, "Hi, I'm Tim, blah, blah, blah," you know? Like, there are new ways of building your network now. And in terms of building your network, I would say be generous. Generosity is just probably one of the most organic and authentic ways to build your network. You know, what can you offer people? Find a mentor, and that's really exciting as well. Finding people who are doing either things that you're interested in or have skills that you'd really like to learn, and just reaching out to people and saying, you know, hey, obviously times are a bit different at the moment, but, you know, hey, I would really like to find out more about your work. I'm trying to do XYZ. Do you have, you know, 15-20 minutes for chat? Another thing is, you know, that thing about self-awareness and understanding what your strengths and weaknesses, that, you know, you might feel that you don't have the confidence to go into that room and get your voice heard, but what other resources and tools do you have? What things are you actually good at that you can use to your advantage to get people to listen and take note?
I would also add how you want to be seen when you're in that room, which is very linked to what Euella was saying also about whether or not there's a better room to be in. But often when we feel like we would like to be in a space, we feel we have to ape the behaviors of that space that already exist. And one of the most unexpected things I have discovered with a lot of the work I've done, and this is so anecdote forthcoming, when I was working on the Cranes project and we were in conversations in London, I was in meetings with lots of the head CEOs and project leaders of massive development sites in London. So these are boardrooms full of literally men in suits, because these are this is a traditionally male dominated building industry. And but what I realized, if I went in places in my kind of like suit uniform, in smart clothes and a paler palette, they dismissed me like a member of their staff, like a secretary or another female role that they understood. If I went in loud colors, and literally actually loud colors, and as the other, they were really comfortable to have me in that space because I was there as the other. I was there to show them that a project could be something extraordinary and you could make cranes do a synchronized dance routine. And I was there with high power photos and videos. I was also able to speak their language. So I mixed that method of looking at other. So they went, cool, you're not one of us, and therefore we can just engage in this in a different way. But using all of their language about their industry. So they went, oh, you're willing to communicate with us though. And that was such an interesting moment of realizing that I needed to, what they needed from me to give me power in that space wasn't what I anticipated. And so when I went to one of the big conferences in Cannes that they were all at, again, because I was doing a big presentation, I turned up wearing a 3-piece machine embroidered suit designed by an amazing embroidery artist I know that has pirates and fish skeletons all over it. And I spent 3 days walking around in this extraordinary variations of this suit, purposely not looking like any of them. And so sometimes that right to be in the room is as the other, but understanding what you want to say and what that language of communication is, and that really fits in with what Euella was saying about looking at who those mentors are, what they're saying, other people who are advocating, giving yourself tools that make it even easier when you enter in is also really worthwhile.
Yeah.
And sometimes there are a school of thoughts, isn't there, about staying outside of it. We had an interesting conversation about whether Rising Arts Agency would choose to go down a specific funding route, didn't we, Euella? And you were saying that actually it feels really important for you to stay outside of that funding route so that you can be the advocates for the change and push that funder in a new direction rather than being beholden to them. And sometimes, and that thing about maybe there is another room or there's another group, we are very rarely on our own. So sometimes there is a thing about going, that's maybe is the fit I want to be in, but how do I give myself the tools to be there as well? I'm sorry, I'm rambling again.
No, that's awesome.
Yeah,
I think so.
Oh, great.
I hope Tim thinks so too.
I hope so as well. I hope we haven't just misanswered your question for you, Tim. But you can also, in a very simple way, as Euella said, so if you want to get involved with Rising Arts, check out their social media, look at what they're doing, follow all the artists, you will have the best Instagram feed ever. Listen in the conversations, join us at ReBels. It's only £60 for the entire year. Come do any of the courses, whether or not we've got people who started off on theatre courses who are now doing composition and who are joining our ReBels music program. We've got projection mapping stuff. We've got all kinds of things coming up, and you have the way we're trying to shape it is that you've got the right to pick and choose and move and find your own creative voice. And that's all we're interested in, is creating opportunities for you to find your own creative voice, whatever and however that ends up being. We're just going to give you just lots of opportunities. So sometimes I remember when I was applying for theatre schools, when I got all the brochures, there was a load of them. I was like, the tone of voice in this brochure is something I do not want anything to do with. I might have had a very different career if I'd been at those, but I didn't want to be in those spaces with that tone of voice. So know you have the right to choose where you want to be. You always have that right.
Yeah.
Always.
Yeah.
And that's also about, when Euella was saying about knowing yourself and knowing your why and leading yourself. If you don't like being around liars and you don't like people who lie, and one of my non-negotiables is I don't lie, and you get one chance of me as a liar, and that's it. And then I'll never work with you again. And it's really simple, because actually I've just realized that's a non-negotiable for me. And whether or not that's, and the same with I won't work with people who are racist. I won't work with people who are again, you know, who put down people from the LGBTQI community. I won't work with people who won't allow people to be who they are. And sometimes it doesn't come to light straight away, but if it does, you have the right not to be in that relationship and work in those spaces or be in those spaces, and to find your communities that where you feel heard and seen and valued. Yeah, sorry, soapbox and
Oh, good.
stepping off.
No, it's all good. We love the passion.
Oh, thanks. Are there any more questions, guys? Any more questions for the wonderful Euella? What's the if there was one thing like one thing that you would love to get a chance to do going forward, what would that be for you?
What, for Euella or for
Yeah,
Rising?
for Euella.
Oh goodness, you always give me the hard ones. Okay, I'm gonna check in with my tiny self-assured voice. I think I would really like to I think I would really like to bring more of my sociology into my presenting work and my content creation. One thing that I haven't said about me is that I actually have a little bit of a fear of labels. So like if someone commissions me to make a film and they're like, yeah, we've got the filmmaker Euella to do this. You've used filmmaker, now I feel like I can't do it. I get imposter syndrome. If you say, Euella, can you make a film? I'll be like, yeah, and we could do this, and we could do that. It's like when, you know, if I'm working, when I was doing my journalism and I worked at a newspaper, call me journalist and now I can't write. Damn, you know? So I would like to, that's why I've never really brought my sociology, you know, I could have just, you know, been quite a, you know, written loads of long pieces for the newspaper and really kind of looked at, you know, at society and done all that fun stuff. But one, the tone isn't right for me. You know, I don't like, yeah, it's a bit dry for me in terms of newspapers. I think there's a real lovely way that you can bring that sort of thing to life, and that's why I love YouTube so much, because you know you communicate. When I was at school for history, the way I used to remember history stuff is I used to remember it like gossip. So I'd be like, and then Henry VIII did this. And then, do you know what I mean? It was the way in which I could retain information instead of seeing it as like some dry kind of facts and figures, you know? So yeah, I think that's what I would really like to do on a big scale, get that sociology, get people really critically thinking about the world that they live in a way that feels really fun and engaging. What that looks like, I don't know.
That's okay. We don't have to know what it looks like. We just have to know the little kernel that we're starting to follow. There's something really interesting though than what you say there, which is about titles and job titles and boxes other people put us into, which I just want to unpack a little bit if you're okay with that. Because I think that is such an important thing, which is also a bit like why I ranted about the jack of all trades thing. I think people put us into boxes as shortcuts, often to make it easy for other people to let us through a door, let us in a room, whatever. But one of the things that I have found with my work is I have watched people from like 4 different industries talk about exactly the same piece of work that I've done exactly the same role on, and talk about it in completely different language and given me 6 different job titles in the same sentence. You know, from to describe it. I literally turned up to a conference that I was a fellow for in India and rewrote my speech that evening because in the first 2 hours of me being there, I had been introduced by a different job title to everybody, by everybody. And I was just like,
Wow.
this is
That's impressive.
I mean, it's quite impressive, but it's also, I suppose I'm saying it to say I was still making the same work. The work hadn't changed. What I had done in my creativity or my choice of how to communicate or my role in those projects was the same, despite all the different ways other people chose to describe it. And I think often we forget that, of course, as you said, when we were saying about place at the table, and if you think there's something needs to happen, that what if, why not? You might be the only person who sees it. Other people are making a quick access point via a starting block that they know and they know you through, but all they're doing is making that quick access point. After that, it is up to you, and you can do anything you like when you're in that room and when you're in that space. It's just a conduit. Yeah, so
yeah,
but it's a really interesting one, the job titles people give us.
yeah, it's you know, it's so that people can kind of make sense of their world, or you know how to treat you, or know how, you know, what value to put on this person. You know, do I say mom, or do I say miss, or do I say Mrs.? And you know, all these kind of things. It changes. People think that it doesn't change anything, but it does. You know, you in your brain, you've kind of coded different words with different things. You know, like calling someone, you know, like a project leader or a community leader versus a CEO. The same thing, but you know, you see the CEO like up there, and you see the community leader as like someone who works in a youth club, who just, you know, does not just, but who does the, you know, arranges like the kind of activities or something. And that's really good. And that this is actually something that we did in the team, is that we all picked our own job titles. Like we were just like, so everyone choose your job title and write your job description, off you go. And that's been really great. And sometimes people, you know, it changes as you're working and you're like, actually this isn't quite right, and I'm doing more of this. And but that's what it's like to, you know, have to live in a very live space where documents are live, policy documents are live, and our job titles are also live. They're a work in progress. So yeah, I love that.
Yeah, and that's the point. We're work in progresses. We are allowed to step forward. We're allowed to change direction. Like, you know, if you listen to what Euella's been saying about all the different things that you've done, and if I think about all the different things I've done, yeah, you have that permission. You always have that permission. It's your life, and if you decide that what you want to do is run a dog sanctuary, or build your own house at the back of your garden, or disappear off to, I don't know, California to you know, to Marina del Rey, and work with the sea lions there and look at the rescue pack. I don't know, like, nobody has the right to tell you you're not making the right decision, because the point is you've made a decision based on what you know in your gut. And what's the worst that's going to happen? You go on a new journey afterwards.
You'll be living in your, yeah, exactly.
It literally is. The worst that's going to happen is you go, cool, that was great, that's enough, I'd like to do something else now.
Yeah,
there's no job security in the world anymore, so we might as well just do whatever we like, right?
yeah.
Like,
I'm glad you said it.
But it's if anyone says you can't, then either go, cool, that's a really good piece of information, and now I know how to sidestep that next time. Sometimes you just, it's quite nice to unpack it, isn't it, Euella, to kind of go, oh, you're saying Okay, well then maybe what if I unpack that? Next time somebody tries to say that to me, I can go like, or oh, I'm just missing one skill. So sometimes it's a practical thing, and sometimes it's just again people are living within rules and systems that you don't think fit anymore or shouldn't fit,
Yeah,
or as you were saying in your last slide, Euella.
yeah. You've got to create your own reality,
Mm.
you know. Um, and you know, you are a creative bunch, so that's not difficult for you. That's like, you know, literally, you know, like telling a dog to go get a bone. Like this is your domain, creativity. So, you know, being able to kind of build the life that you want using the tools that you have right now to maybe get more tools, or to think about how you can kind of expand your experiences. Like, this is what is the kind of fun part of life, is that kind of, that building, that creativity.
I think that is the most wonderful note on which to draw this evening to a close. Um,
Amazing.
Thank you so much, Euella, for your time this evening and your beautiful insight and wisdom. And I think I can't wait to see how Rising Arts grows, and I can't wait to see what we can do with you guys. And maybe there's a Plymouth chapter.
Maybe
Uh,
there is.
Maybe there is. Maybe there's a Plymouth chapter in the future. Thank you everyone for this evening and for all your really great questions. We really appreciate it. Thank you so much for putting up with the and thank you for putting up with me in my magic mouse finger. It's these are every week. These are an absolute joy. Please do sign up for next week's. Which is from John and Brett, talking about how to make films on a budget or on no budget. You will not be disappointed. Once again, thank you so much, Euella, for this evening and for your insight and your wisdom. It's so greatly appreciated.
Thank you.
Brilliant. And good night.